Welcome, Elena Murray, to the Kingdom of Pavement playground.
It's a playground.
It's a playground.
Hooray!
Yeah.
We're like Aunt Bessie's. Plants.
There's a plant, a salt lamp.
It's
Good
got
vibes all around.
Good energy.
Yeah.
Lovely,
Yeah.
warm.
Elena is an actress and a poet, so we thought we'd start this out with a really fun improv beat poetry exercise.
Do a group poem.
I'm
Group
here
poem.
for
It's
it.
gonna be great.
We're gonna do
Start
it.
us out
Yeah.
with one word each.
One word. We just go around the circle. Everybody do one word. We also have to like snap,
Yeah, when we feel it.
or when we feel it, or
When it
just
feels inspired.
Yeah.
Crowning.
Painfully.
Rugby. Mitigating.
Sweat.
Laminating.
Without.
Rest.
Inspiring.
I think we're good.
I think
we're good. We did it. We made a poem.
We
wrote a
should have.
poem.
We should
You know what?
I
I
have to
took
look at the transcripts
Yeah.
and see if maybe that was a haiku. 'Cause it could have been. We might be able to have made that a haiku.
To me, that said, a woman is giving birth, and her husband is playing rugby, and he's not there, and all there is at the end of it is sweat.
On
this
both
is
sides.
On both sides.
Sweat from the mother, sweat from the father.
The poem is called Sweat.
It's very deep.
I like that.
It's good. Look at us.
We just wrote a poem. We're good.
just
We
wrote
could
a
just
poem.
do that through the whole book.
It's amazing.
We made it.
But
That's
Elena,
an idea, though.
totally. But what we want to talk about is not us saying random words, but we want to talk about the fact that you've been so gracious to be a featured performer at a bunch of our shows.
Oh no!
And
I'm so happy that you just let me say things in front of people.
All we
and you
want.
say them in front of people so well. And I wanted to like start talking about how your acting background kind of informs your poetry, because I think it's really cool. Like your performances have this really interesting electric feel, and I want to kind of dig into that just a little bit.
I'm so glad that you feel that way, because if I'm being perfectly honest, for me, acting on stage in a play or a musical is almost nothing like performing poetry. And what I mean to say by that is that poetry is one of the scariest things that I've ever done, and I guess I've just been acting for so long that it's become second nature to me, and it doesn't really faze me performing in front of people. But poetry is so personal, and it's so vulnerable, and it's such a part of myself that it just like scares the shit out of me to do it all the time, which is why I keep forcing myself to do it, because I'm like, you're gonna get used to it, you're gonna keep doing it, it's gonna be okay. But you know, it's not to say that acting isn't a part of yourself either. It is. It's just you get to kind of hide behind somebody else. And with poetry, for me, at least for my poetry, I'm really not hiding behind anything. It's probably the most vulnerable part of myself that I am choosing to share with people. And it definitely scared me. It still scares me to a degree, but less now, especially because I've been able to perform at Kingdom of Pavement so often, and that's great, because that's really helping me along with everything. But I would say as far as performance goes, just with the inherent kind of toolkit that I've assembled from training and years of doing stuff, like I am able to, I think, maybe work with articulation and tempo and diction and things a little bit more thoroughly than if I were coming from kind of a square one of not having any kind of performance background. So I am grateful for that.
It really strikes me. Your work strikes me because of the content, but also your delivery, and because it is personal, you get that added experience of you're putting your own emotion into it, and it comes through to the audience, and the audience shakes when they watch you. It's such an amazing
That's good.
experience.
I'm shaking too.
Yeah.
It's a visceral experience, and like you feel it. Like I think with true vulnerability and like good art, you feel the artist's vulnerability, and you feel it in your seats, and you're like, same.
Thank you for it.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
You know.
I told you I was gonna make a lot of noises, because like that's part of the thing with poetry is like I feel like poetry is all feeling. There are different artistic forms, especially in writing, and I feel like out of all of them, poetry is probably the most feeling based of them all, which is good because I'm just like all feeling all the time, and most of the time if I don't put pen to paper, I have a really hard time articulating myself, and I end up just making faces and noises because I'm like, I don't know how I feel, but I feel like is kind of what ends up happening, and then people are like, Okay, great.
I relate to this so much. Yeah. I mean, it's not always something you can verbalize,
No,
right?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why I think I really connected with poetry, because it was something I found a way to verbalize what I couldn't verbalize before.
Yeah.
Because it just started like.
As far as inspiration is concerned, do you draw from your own experiences primarily, or do you like listen to other poets? Do you read other poetry?
I do, yeah. I do read other poets. I listen to other poets. I go to the Poetry Lounge all the time, which is a great place to check out if you have not been there, people who may be listening. It's at the Green Court Theater every Tuesday. They do slams every third Tuesday, and then every other Tuesday is open mic, and they have workshops every second and fourth Tuesday, which I go to as often as I can. Great community, great resource for poets and stuff, but I listen a lot there. I haven't performed there yet. I'm still working up to it.
When you
working
do,
up
will
to
you
it.
tell us?
I will. Oh,
Great.
absolutely, I will. But I'm working up to that because that's scary, because it's like mad humongous.
Yeah.
But it's really cool, and there's some really amazing poets that go on there. I know Amy's been there before, and it's really, really amazing.
Yeah, especially.
They have some just phenomenal talent there. And so I actually found some of my favorite poets there, like Alicia Wise, who runs Spoken Lit or Slam, which is a writing program that does workshops and stuff with her husband, Matt Cuban, who are really, well, Matt Cuban Hernandez, but he goes by Cuban. It's a little name, They're amazing. Like I was so intimidated by them initially because they're just these fantastic poets that were so mythical to me for a long time, where I was just like, I've read your work, I've seen you perform, I've watched all your videos, like you're so cool. And then I did a workshop with them, and I was like, you're also the best people in the world. Like, how could this be the thing? But you are. And they were so phenomenal. Alicia's work really inspires me. She's just amazing. And Donnie, who also is frequent at the poetry, he had just had a book come out yesterday called Boy, that's really great. He's a phenomenal poet. He also has really great performance. Like, his delivery is so great. I think other inspiration, Olivia Gatwood is a huge inspiration for me. I think one of the first poems that I remember watching a video of that really made me actually just sob and cry was her poem Manic Pixie Dream Girl, which is really beautiful. And
I got chills hearing the name of it. I'm like, that poem's about me.
Whoa, if
shit.
You need to just go to YouTube, look it up.
Yeah.
You watch it, you'll be like, huh. It's great, and I love that. And so she just came out with a new book called Life of the Party that is really great.
You're so dialed into this scene, the poetry scene, actually.
Kind of.
I'm curious, because I would love to check all of that stuff out more, but I'm curious, in LA, besides that niche, what is the poetry scene like in LA, like in general?
Well, I don't know.
Yeah.
Other than what we're doing here and what I do here with you, and then the Poetry Lounge, I'm still relatively new. I think to everything that's going on. I'm starting to try and expand a little bit more, getting to know some other people. A friend of mine runs an erotic poetry night that I want to check out, that I've been meaning to check out. They keep missing, which is unfortunate, but I want to do that, and that's really cool. It's called Quiddle Lexicon. Huh. I know, isn't that great?
Lovely. It's a
isn't
great
that
name.
wonderful?
Yeah.
So I love the specificity of that, though, and I feel like that's boding well for the fact that people are sort of this community is growing.
Right, and that's what I'm kind of trying to grow with it. I'm trying to find out more and go to more open mics and just kind of meet other people who are doing the same kind of stuff, which is scary for me because I'm afraid of everyone all the time. But I'm trying.
Yeah, but going back to your work, what you were talking about, like other poets starting to work on their books, like I know that you're working on a book too that I've read and I love. Do you want to talk a little bit about the process and where you're at with your poetry book and kind of what it's like to select the poems and put them in order and kind of that whole process? So
something that I'm starting to understand about this book that I've been writing, I'm not sure. I really think it should be 3 books now.
We need more material.
Maybe like 3 chapbooks or or just keep. I don't know. It keeps evolving, and I keep not cutting it off. I keep just being like, well, now it's 3 parts. Okay. But the thing is that since I really I'd written before, I'd written in high school and stuff, but then I, went maybe 10, 12 years without really writing anything at all. And then this person I was dating for a couple of weeks dumped me, and I was really sad. And I couldn't sleep one night, and these words were just coming around in my head, and I grabbed, my phone, and I just started writing, and I wrote this poem called Dust. And that was about 2.5 years ago, and I haven't really stopped since then. And so that was kind of like this reopening of these floodgates of poems and doing all this stuff together with this work. But what's happened is, because I've been continually doing it, it's always growing, it's always evolving, it's always changing. My style is changing, the things that I play with are changing, and all of these things have a very specific tone. And so I've kind of separated all of them into these little sections, and I'm like, okay, maybe it'll just be a 3-part book now. But the first one is definitely like coming out of, or being single for the first time in 7 years, and dealing with that and understanding who I am as a person outside of anything else other than myself. And then the second part is kind of forming this relationship with myself and breaking my habit of codependency in like my, this good new relationship that I'm in, and coming to terms with aspects of myself that maybe I don't quite like. And then the third part of it is kind of consolidating all of that, and then also dealing with my mortality. That's kind of those are the 3 sections, but the style is all very different, and you can kind of see it as a journey. And so that's kind of how I chose the structure of it and which poems go where, because I really see it as this evolution, sort of, that is probably never going to be complete, but I have to just decide that it should be complete at some point and then cut it off and try something else. So yeah,
that's amazing. That sounds phenomenal. It's so great how thoughtful that you are in your process, and I'm so excited that you're going to be performing at our secret show today. And so I want to know, what is, to kind of like wrap things up, like what is the story behind one of the poems that you're going to be sharing today?
Okay, so one of the poems that I'm going to do still doesn't have a title. I keep going back and forth, and they all just seem wrong, but I'm kind of swatting around different titles right now, like Millennial Manifesto or something. They sound dumb to me every time I say it out loud. I'm like, it just doesn't have a title. But it's basically something that, it deals with something that I deal with all the time, which is what my therapist calls catastrophic thinking. Because I always think in worst case scenarios all the time. Like anytime anything happens, I have a cut and I'm like, I'm gonna bleed out. Like just worst case scenarios all the time. And what I chose to do in that poem was kind of examine why I am like that, but then also look at, there are a lot of other people my age who are like this too. And what is the common denominator of all of that? Why are we so anxious as a age group? Why are we afraid of all these things all the time? Why do we work so hard and don't really reap any of the benefits that people older than us would have reaped by now? Where is this all coming from? And really it came down to how some of the, probably worst things that have happened in the history of the world happened when we were very young and in front of our eyes, like on national television. Like we're looking at the terrorist attacks on 9/11. Like I remember when that happened, how old was I? I was 11. I was in 6th grade, and I saw, the second plane hit live on TV before I went to school, and then I still went to school. And we were all there, and then they were like, we're just gonna watch TV for an hour and then we're gonna send you home. But then I couldn't get picked up because my parents were working, and like all these things were happening, and so we have this like desensitized sort of notion of the world, but with terrorism and domestic terrorism and school shootings and just constantly being like, I don't know, someone could come up in here and kill me for no reason, and here we are. And then all of the things that I'm working towards could be taken away from me in a second. No wonder we're all anxious all the time. And that's kind of what this poem is about.
I feel that. I feel that. Yeah. Well, we just want to thank you so much for sharing your stories and your poems with us and having the power and the courage to be vulnerable on stage in front of people, which is hard and such an integral part of being artists. And so it's just really special that you bring that to our open mic nights and to the secret show today. So we're so excited to hear you perform.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here and for you having me and letting me say stuff at people.
Oh,
yes.
There will always be a space for you to say stuff.
Snaps for us. Snaps for our
poetry.
poems.
Yes.
Snaps for
Sweat. Don't remember it.
No.
Don't, but it'll be
We know it was great.
That's the next book. That's